I trusted him. I thought I knew him. But all that I thought was a lie. Meri Brown's hands trembled as she gripped the pile of documents. Every page weighed more than the previous one, as if they bore the burden of a lifetime of trust. Trust that had just been destroyed. The papers were more than financial records or legal documents. They were evidence of a secret decision Cody had made, one that threatened the very stability of their family. Their home, the refuge she had so lovingly built, and the savings she had so carefully accumulated for her children's future, now all teetered on a thin thread. The living room, once a haven of comfort and familiarity, now felt foreign. The walls that had heard the sound of laughter, holiday celebrations, and quiet family time were now constrictive. Every corner whispered, "How was this allowed to happen on your watch?" Her heart beat furiously, pounding against her chest like an insistent drumbeat, mirroring the turmoil of shock and terror churning in her mind. For 40 years, Meri had lived a life of compromise. She learned to dance the tightrope of a polygamous marriage, to find love and understanding in midst of complexity, and to put the needs of her family before her own. She accepted hard choices, suffered personal losses, and even endured heartache, trusting that loyalty, patience, and faith would be enough to get her through. But this felt different. This was not just a disappointment. This was a betrayal of the core, the type of betrayal that pierces through all layers of trust, all memories of closeness, and all expectations for the future. For the first time, she felt isolated from the life she had so strenuously fought to maintain. Her brain spun when she attempted to wrap her head around what it all meant. Cody had made a one-man financial decision. A decision that included not just their home they lived in, but also the investments Meri had worked hard to get for the kids' schooling. A decision made unilaterally, without discussion, and without the respect that would have been the foundation of any marriage, polygamous or monogamous. The questions poured in, relentless and unstoppable. Why now? Why in secret? Did he ever think of the consequences? Did he ever think of the children? Each question hit her like a blow to the chest, each one more searing than the last. Meri was always proud to be intuitive, to know when something was not right, and yet, this had caught her completely off guard. She felt dumb, betrayed, and scared all in one. Her feelings crashed together like waves on a turbulent sea. Anger came first, burning and all-devouring, and her face flushed and her fists tightened around the papers until her knuckles were white. She wanted to howl, to call out to him at once, to ask questions that she didn't know she might ever be given answers to. And yet, beneath the anger, a deep sadness came flooding in, an aching sorrow that threatened to engulf her. Meri had spent years establishing herself as the strong one of the family. She had been the sensible one in arguments, the nurse when someone was sick or under crisis, and the emotional ballast for her kids when the world seemed to be rocking out of control. And now, that role was being challenged in ways she could never have dreamed. She felt the weight of responsibility bearing down upon her. Not only was she facing an individual betrayal, but she had also to think about her children's well-being, who relied on her stability, her guidance, and her protection. She sat down on the edge of the couch, the papers slipping out from under her fingers, and gave in to a brief moment of vulnerability. Her chest constricted, and her eyes brimmed over with tears. She heard the distant sounds of her children playing, their innocent laughter oblivious to the storm that was going to invade their world. She could not bear the thought of them being touched by her husband's irresponsible action, and her heart tightened even more. She felt an almost unbearable combination of fear and determination, a desire to shield them from harm, and a need to ensure that justice, in whatever form, would prevail. Meri's mind wandered back through memories of her life with Cody, the promises made, the shared dreams, the quiet moments of intimacy, and the small victories they had celebrated together. Every memory now held a sour taste, tainted by the fact that some of those moments had been founded on lies. She recalled nights lying awake, fretting about bills, scheming for their children's futures, and making sacrifices to keep the family intact. She knew, in a sharp and hurting way, that Cody's secret choice had destroyed all that effort, corroding the trust that had taken so long to establish. She also considered the other wives, some of whom she had called friends, others competitors, all operating the same intricate game of loyalty, love, and expectation. What would they do? Would they see her hurt? Or would they think her hysterical? Would they back her in standing up? Or would she have to fight alone? The not knowing added another level of stress, making the room smaller still, the atmosphere denser. But in the midst of fear and pain, a flame of determination flared. Meri knew that she had two options: to back down, allow the betrayal to slide by unchecked, or to face it head-on, regardless of the cost to herself. She considered her children one more time, their futures, their feeling of security, the example they would observe in their mother. Could she make them brave, strong, and full of self-respect, if she let herself be muzzled? The response was obvious. She would not be muzzled. She set the papers precisely down on the coffee table, straightened her spine, and breathed deeply. It was done. It wasn't about money or assets. This was about her dignity, her position as a mother, and her right to be heard. She would battle, not with ill will, but with a determination fueled by love, hurt, and a necessity to defend her family. As she gazed out the window, seeing the evening sun stretch long shadows across the lawn, Meri experienced a peculiar combination of fear and empowerment. She understood that the way forward would be challenging, involving emotional confrontations, legal struggles, and personal growth. But at the same time, for the first time in a very long time, she was entering her power. She was no longer responding to life. She was fighting back, standing up and facing off for the fight that would determine the future of her family. Her heart hurt still, and tears hadn't fully dried, but there was determination through the pain. Meri spoke to herself softly. I might be betrayed, but I am not defeated. I will endure this, and I will defend what is most important. In that instant, the room was no longer a prison. It was the starting gate of a fight she was prepared to win. A fight for the truth, for respect, and for the future of her children. And although the tempest within her hadn't yet subsided, Meri knew one thing with absolute clarity: she would not allow this betrayal to consume her. She would be greater than it, whatever it cost. The sunlight in the morning crept through the blinds in cold, slashing lines, piercing Meri Brown's living room, but failing to dispel the weight bearing down on her heart. The papers were neatly arranged on the table, as if daring her with their silent judgment. She had passed the night running over each possible situation in her head, her mind revolving like a merry-go-round of fear, rage, and desperation. Meri sensed something important: she could no longer do nothing. Quiet would merely enable betrayal to grow stronger in her family, threatening everything she treasured. Every part of her was screaming that she had to do something, but the road in front was frightful. She was sure that fighting with Cody would not be simple. He was self-assured, charismatic, and skilled at persuasion. But Meri also understood something he underappreciated: her resilience, spurred on by heartbreak and motherly instinct. She walked the room, the sound of her children's laughter floating in from the other side of the house. She stood, listening, allowing their pure joy to hold on to her storming feelings. The knowledge that they were vulnerable, that this secret betrayal had touched them, set a fire burning within her. She could not let fear immobilize her. She needed to battle, not for herself, but for their safety, their future, and the justice they were due. Taking a resolute breath, Meri reached out and grabbed the phone, dialing the number she had been wavering over for hours. When the connection was made, her voice was firm but hushed, bristling with soft insistence. I need your help, she replied in one word. But the weight of the words was unmistakable. She contacted a lawyer known for tackling difficult family cases, someone who had a reputation for standing firm when emotions ran high, and stakes were even higher. The lawyer, empathetic but unshakable, listened to Meri's story with a seriousness that only confirmed the gravity of the situation. They discussed strategy, possible outcomes, and most importantly, how to protect her children and her rights. Every detail of the conversation solidified Meri's resolve. This was no longer just about betrayal. This was about survival. Meri spent the afternoon by herself, thinking over the years she had spent in the family she had built. She considered the sacrifices she had made, Hundreds of holidays spent quietly with Cody while everyone else was off celebrating somewhere else. Hard conversations avoided with tact. And countless sacrifices no one had ever really seen. Every memory now had a bite to it. A bitter taste that trust could be so casually destroyed. But as the shadows grew longer and the evening drew closer, a resolve descended on her. She would not be defined by the betrayal. She would turn her anguish into power, her heartache into action, and her terror into bravery. The prospect of walking into a courtroom, standing before Cody, and telling her truth turned her stomach with fear. But it also filled her with a strength she hadn't known in years. Mary's children sensed her shift in energy and approached her cautiously. They could sense the tension, but didn't entirely comprehend it. She sat down to their level, sweeping away locks of hair that rested against their faces. "Everything's going to be all right," she whispered, adopting a piece she herself didn't fully possess. "Mommy is going to keep us safe. I promise." Their tiny hands grasped hers tightly, providing a fragile but deep reassurance. At that moment, she understood the reality. Her struggle was greater than her own. It was for them, and it was for the life they were worthy of. That night, Meri made a plan. She would compile all the evidence, all the reports of the previous financial decisions, and all the papers indicating Cody's constant disregard for her opinion. She would mentally steel herself for battle, practicing the words she knew would hurt the most, but have the power to be heard. It was not revenge she wanted. It was justice, accountability, and a means to take back control over the life that had been derailed. In the still times, she also thought about the other wives. Some were kind behind closed doors. Others stood aloof, not knowing where their allegiance must be. It was a juggling act of family politics and personal loyalties. Meri understood that in order to prosper, she couldn't count on sympathy alone. Evidence, clarity, and single-minded concentration were her necessities. The cost to her emotions was huge, but she was changing. Pain forging her into a stronger, more acute woman, who was not afraid to confront confrontation head-on. As she prepared for what was ahead, a refrain kept occurring to her mind. "This is not just about a house, or dollars, or shattered promises. This is about proving my kids and me that betrayal does not destroy us. Strength does." By the following morning, Meri was firm. She had spoken to witnesses, written out her statements, and booked appointments with financial advisors to review Cody's covert maneuvers. Every step, no matter how small, was a taking back of control. She entered each moment understanding that fear and doubt were inevitable, but they would not determine her course. She would walk into the storm, even if it meant she would stand alone in a courtroom, and she would not back down. Even as she gazed into the mirror that morning, she hardly recognized herself. The timid, compromising wife was gone, replaced by a woman forged in heartbreak, honed by betrayal, and fueled by love and justice. Her eyes burned with a fierce determination that could not be spoken, a silent vow to the world that she would no longer be still. And in that instant, Meri Brown promised, not only to herself, but to her children, to the truth, and to her own sense of dignity. She would see Cody in court, and she would not be deterred. She would fight the betrayal head-on, and make sure justice, whatever form it took, was served. For the first time in what seemed like an eternity, she felt a sense of purpose that went beyond fear. The road ahead would be long and hard, emotionally exhausting, and filled with obstacles. But for the life she had chosen for herself and her children, she would take it without question. The battle was joined, the stage was set, and Meri knew that from this day forward, nothing stood in her way to fight for what she was due. The court hearing day arrived, and the tension hung in the air outside the courthouse. Cameras from reporters flashed intermittently, though they had been barred entry, but the feeling of public observation hung like a specter. Within, the room seemed less spacious than Meri recalled, the walls bearing down with an almost palpable pressure. Each chair, each bench, each soft movement was magnified. Meri sat at her table, hands clasped tightly in front of her, the papers she had prepared neatly stacked. Her lawyer sat beside her, radiating calm determination, but Mary's heart still raced with a mixture of fear, anger, and the steely resolve she had cultivated over the past days. Across the room, Cody sat, posture rigid, hands folded, exuding his usual confident air, but Meri had seen the flicker in his eyes, a glimmer of nervousness he was attempting desperately to hide. The judge entered, and the room was silent. The proceedings started, but Meri hardly listened. Her attention was on the fight she had been training for, the fight that would restore her family's protection, or expose her to harm. Each nerve in her body was wound up tight, ready to confront the reality and make demands. When her attorney started to speak, outlining the case with clarity, the courtroom changed. "Your Honor, this case is not just about money mistakes or neglect," the attorney started, voice firm and authoritative. "It is about trust, integrity, and the future of children who rely on the adults in their lives to do the right thing." Meri never took her eyes from Cody. She witnessed the repressed mask he wore at all times, the minute clenching of his jaw, the passing look at the documents she had so assiduously prepared. Every telltale indicator informed her that he understood the proof was incriminating. Her attorney went on, showing evidence of the covert financial choices, pointing out the risks that had been undertaken unknown to Meri. The courtroom sat in hushed suspense, taking in the enormity of the deception. The documents that Cody believed he concealed were now laid bare under examination. Irrefutable evidence that trust had been broken again and again. Meri's emotions surged as her lawyer detailed the impact of these actions. She had anticipated this moment, rehearsed the words, but hearing them spoken aloud in such a public and formal setting still struck her deeply. Every example of past neglect, every unilateral decision by Cody, was laid bare, not as accusations of malice, but as evidence of disregard for the partnership she had invested in so fully. Next came the key moment. Her attorney produced a secret document, never before revealed, revealing a succession of financial decisions, made only by Cody in the last few years. It was precise, concise, and indubitable. The judge looked at the documents, eyebrows rising, and even Cody's cocky facade skipped a beat. Soft gasps spread through the room, as the implications were absorbed. The tension was stifling. Meri felt the burden of each stare, each hushed thought, weighing her down. Her heart pounded, adrenaline pumping through her system. She knew that this conflict wasn't merely about winning a case. It was about being worthy, watchful, and deserving of being heard. The judge finally addressed Meri. "Miss Brown, you may testify." Her gut contracted. Every nerve cried out with anticipation, fear, and raw, almost unmanageable longing to be heard. She breathed deeply, standing up straight even though her hands were shaking. The gaze within the courtroom appeared to center completely on her. The judge, Cody, the attorneys, and even those few family members present. "I am here," Meri started, her tone firm at first, not in anger, but in need. "Not for revenge, but for protecting what belongs to me, and belongs to them." She nodded toward her children, picturing them sitting in the back of the courtroom, listening. "For years I trusted the man I loved. I compromised. I forgave. I suffered. I thought there was such a thing as trust. I thought promises were kept." Tears brimmed in her eyes. But she stood tall. "But I was wrong. Behind my back, there were decisions made. Decisions that jeopardized our home, our money, and our children's future. Decisions made without listening, without regard, without compassion." Her words lingered in the air, heavy with suffering and truth. Cody's eyes wavered, his mouth compressing as he attempted to craft a reply. For the first time in years, Meri noticed vulnerability in him, a flash of awareness that his choices had repercussions beyond his control. The attorney probed gently, permitting Meri to recall instances of previous events, moments of negotiation, and the constant burden she had borne to keep the family intact. With each narrative, her evidence grew heavier, describing a woman who struggled relentlessly for trust, respect, and protection of her children. And then at last, came the emotional climax, the crescendo of emotion. Meri addressed herself, not to the judge, not to the attorney, but to Cody directly. "I have loved this family with all my heart. I have sacrificed more than I can even list. But love cannot endure betrayal. I won't allow fear, dishonesty, or disrespect to characterize my children's life or mine." The court was silent, nearly one of reverence. The words were not accusations. They were a declaration, a claim of strength and bravery. Meri felt a curious mix of exhaustion and elation. She had confronted the man who betrayed her, spoken her truth, and exposed the depth of her suffering and strength. Cody's normal calm was absent.
His eyes, once so confident and unflappable, now wore an expression of something new. Acceptance, maybe regret, maybe fear. Meri recognized this wasn't the end of the war, but it was a turning point. She had asserted her voice, and in that had altered the power dynamic, in a way that no concealed papers, or behind closed doors decisions could erase. As she sat back down, a peaceful resolve came over her. The battle wasn't won yet. The judge would deliberate. Arguments would be made. But Meri felt victory deep within herself. She had battled the storm and remained unbroken. She had demonstrated that betrayal hurt, but it couldn't destroy the strength of a mother who was willing to do whatever it took to defend her family. Outside, the sun had set behind the courthouse, casting long shadows over the steps. Meri knew the road ahead would be tough, emotionally exhausting, and full of obstacles. But she also knew this confrontation had served to prove one undeniable fact. She was no longer quiet, she was no longer helpless, and she would not be intimidated. The courtroom fell quiet. The air was thick with tension, as though each member of the audience could sense the tempest raging inside Meri Brown. This was the moment she had dreaded and awaited. The opportunity to tell her truth, not of financial deception, but of heartache, sacrifice, and the ongoing fight to safeguard her children and her pride. The judge fixed his eyes on her, his look firm but inquiring. "Miss Brown, you may testify." Mary's hands trembled slightly, but her chin lifted. She could feel the weight of everyone's eyes on her. The lawyers, the judge, even Cody, whose calm facade had cracked just enough to reveal unease. But more importantly, she imagined her children in the gallery. Even if they weren't there physically, she drew strength from them, knowing that this was a fight for their future as much as her own. She drew a deep breath and started. "I am not here because I am angry. I am not here for revenge. I am here for truth, for justice, and for my children." Her voice trembled initially, but with each sentence it became stronger. "For years I had trusted. I had trusted promises. I had trusted that love entailed partnership. And I gave all I could. My time, my heart, my sacrifices, assuming that what I gave would be honored." Tears pricked the corners of her eyes, on the verge of overflowing. She pressed them back, not wanting to give in to fear or vulnerability. Instead, she channeled the emotion into the words, and they rang with a raw truth that commanded the attention of the courtroom. "But the truth is, trust can be broken, promises can be disregarded, and love can be tested in ways you never anticipate." She told of sleepless nights concerned for her children, of times she had suppressed tears to reassure them, of sacrifices made unobtrusively, while maintaining the family afloat. She told of choices made over her head, of efforts overlooked, and of the burden borne in silence. Each sentence measured, considered, but full of emotion. "And I am here to tell you," she went on, her voice shaking but firm, "that betrayal does not define me. I am greater than the suffering I have experienced. I am greater than the shattered promises. I am their mother, their guardian, and I will not let deception tear down what we have constructed." The courtroom was still. Even Cody, usually composed, shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Mary's words were not an attack. They were a powerful testament of resilience, love, and self-respect. Each syllable carried the weight of years of struggle, heartbreak, and unwavering maternal devotion. Her lawyer steered the questions wisely, enabling Meri to narrate individual events where her opinion had been disregarded, her sacrifices overlooked, and where her trust had been breached. She spoke openly, creating a picture of her life, and what it meant emotionally to be betrayed. All members of the audience present could sense the hurt, the resilience, and the strength that lay within her testimony. Next was the turning point. Meri addressed Cody directly. "I have loved this family with every fiber of my being. I have given more than I ever believed I could give. But love cannot sustain lies, deception, and disrespect. I am here to see that my children are loved, that their mother will stand up for them, and that their future will not be jeopardized by decisions made thoughtlessly and without respect." A silence descended upon the room. Her words lingered on, a palpable energy, unavoidable. She had spoken beyond statistics and data. She had touched the heart of the family, the common past, and the shattered trust. Each sentence was calculated to express her hurt, her courage, and her determination. Mary's voice strengthened, steadied as she finished. I stand here not only for myself, but for my children. And I will keep on standing, however hard, however painful, because they need protecting more than they need fear, more than they need anger, and more than they need the past that cannot be changed. This is about respect. This is about dignity. This is about the future. The courtroom was still, the gravity of her testimony settling deep upon all who sat before her. The judge nodded gravely, recognizing the intensity of her words. As Cody looked away, the breaks in his facade now irreparable, Meri went back to her seat, a stillness of calm descending on her. She had told the truth about herself, revealed the emotional and practical betrayals she had suffered, and asserted her strength in a manner that could not be denied. Although the verdict had not yet been reached, she felt triumphant. She had regained her voice, her power and her dignity. Even as the day dragged on, and the hearings went on, Meri was aware that the emotional power of her evidence would extend far beyond the courtroom. It hadn't been easy. Tears, shaking, and naked truth had all had their say. But it had needed to be done. She had confronted the man who betrayed her, and remained unbroken. She had proved that even betrayal can hurt, but can never kill the determination of a mother who is fighting for her children and herself. As the court adjourned for the day, Meri made her slow way to the door, shoulders back, heart heavy but not broken. The sun struck her face as she emerged outside, and she gave herself one deep gasp. She knew the war wasn't won. The ultimate ruling would still follow. But she also knew something vital. She had already triumphed in a manner that no court verdict could ever deprive her. She had known fear. She had known betrayal. And she had emerged greater, louder and more resolute than ever. And in that determination, Meri Brown came to understand that no matter what happened, she had won something far greater than money or belongings. She had won her truth, her dignity, and her power. The courtroom was filled with tension, as they all waited for the judge to make his decision. Meri Brown sat silently, hands clasped together, heart racing like a drum in her chest. Weeks of prep, sleepless nights, emotional battles, and unyielding courage had culminated in this moment. And now everything else remained, except the last word, a verdict that would decide not only the fate of the family funds, but the emotional equilibrium of her life and her children's lives. She stole a glance at Cody, who sat across the room, his posture rigid, jaw tight, eyes flicking nervously to the judge. The confident man she had once known seemed smaller somehow, weighed down by the undeniable evidence and Meri's unwavering testimony. For the first time, she realized just how powerful standing up for oneself could be, not through confrontation alone, but through truth, courage, and dignity. The judge cleared his throat and began to speak. Meri's breath caught in her throat. Every word was crucial, every pause loaded with anticipation.
Oh. He acknowledged the evidence, the testimony, and the impact of Cody's secret decisions on the family. He noted Mary's sacrifices, her emotional resilience, and her dedication to her children. The courtroom was silent. Even the faint hum of shifting chairs seemed amplified in the tense air. Although the court understands that certain financial decisions were taken without consultation, measures will be taken to ensure accountability in the future, said the judge. Additionally, Ms. Brown's input into family decisions will be formally acknowledged to protect the interests of the children and the family unit in general. Relief and victory coursed through Meri, mixed with residual fatigue. It wasn't a complete win, but it was a victory. She had reclaimed her voice and authority within the family, placed safeguards on her children, and faced betrayal without losing herself. Every tear, every restless night, every jolt of fear had brought her to this place. Her gaze sought out her children, who had slipped unnoticed into the gallery previously, curious and tentative. Their little faces lighted when she gave a reassuring smile. She had promised them safety and stability, and now had provided it. Better than that, she had taught them what strength was, what it was to assert oneself, and how love and courage could exist together. Outside, the sun was setting, and golden light spilled across the stairs. Meri walked into it, the cool breeze against her skin. She took a deep breath, letting go of the tension of the past few weeks with each exhale. The fight was not yet fully won. Relationships would heal over time. Trust would have to be rebuilt, and emotional scars would remain.
But she had built a foundation for a future where her voice counted. For a moment, she permitted herself to experience the full impact of her emotions: grief, relief, fatigue, and empowerment, all interwoven. She whispered to herself, "I lost the life I thought I had, but I found the strength I never knew I had."
Meri knew the path forward would be tough. The family dynamics, previously complicated, would now be forever changed. Cody's decisions had left wounds, and untangling the aftermath would take patience, wisdom, and resiliency. But at that moment, she felt a deep clarity. Said, a deep clarity. She had confronted betrayal in its face, had not been silenced, and had earned a measure of justice for herself and her children. As she descended the courthouse stairs, reporters shouting questions from a distance, slivers of camera flashes freezing the moment, she experienced a lightness that she had not anticipated. She had been into darkness, charged the battlefield of emotion for trust and betrayal, and had come out with dignity in hand. Her children held her hands as she guided them away, and she felt the quiet pride of knowing that they had seen something precious: the courage to struggle for what is important. Meri looked back at the courthouse for the final time, a reminder of the fight she had waged and the resilience she had found in herself. This courtroom confrontation had pushed her to places she could never have conceived, but it had also shown her how deep her resilience ran. She had battled fear, sorrow, and deceit, and was stronger, louder, and more determined than she had ever been. And as she walked into the waning daylight, Meri Brown knew that this was not merely the conclusion of a court case, it was the start of a new page. A page where her voice counted, her children were safe, and her strength was unquestionable. No longer would she be defined by betrayal, she would be defined by courage, love, and the unwavering resolve to stand for what she stood for.